Okay, so welcome to part 3 of my advice videos on how to claim for Personal Independence Payment or PIP. In this video we're going to be talking a little bit about the face-to-face assessment and some things that you need to consider in advance of doing it, and also how the actual assessment itself may go. So, when you have completed your form and sent it in, as you know, you will probably get a letter saying that they've received it, and that they will be then passing over to Capita or possibly another organisation who will get in touch to do the face-to-face assessment. Now, it's sort of dependent on the area that you live as to whether you initially will get a home visit assessment or whether you will need to go into an office to have that assessment. Most of the time when people are going into an office, an external location, they will usually be connected to public offices in some way, usually the benefits kind of office local to you, sometimes maybe a health centre, things like that. So it's important that you check when you find out the location of the assessment. It's important that you check what the access is like, what the parking is like, and how easy or difficult it is going to be for you to get there, and whether or not you're going to need assistance to do that. If you do, and you live in an area where it's sort of automatic that you get invited into an office, the first thing to do is, as soon as you know whether you're going to be able to do that or not, is get in touch with them and see if any adjustments can be made or alternative arrangements. Certainly, if you can get any evidence to back up why alternative arrangements would need to be made, that would be really helpful. So if you've got a doctor or a healthcare worker, maybe a mental health worker, or anybody like that, possibly even a care agency that can just write something in support of your request to sort of have a home visit or something similar, then add that in, because that will sort of make things a bit easier. Some areas, of course, they don't have the ability to rent out an office or use an office, and so they will actually do home visits as a sort of matter of course anyway. It's important to bear in mind with home visits is that you're being seen in your own environment. So in some ways it can be an advantage, and in other ways it can be a disadvantage. So think kind of carefully about how you portray yourself. The important thing is to be very honest. If you need to use a walking stick to move around your home on occasion, and you happen to be needing one that day, then do use it. It's important for the assessor to see how you're managing, and there's many things like that. Equally, if you have an assessor come in through the door and you answer the door yourself, from the minute that you do that, they're going to be looking at you and assessing you. Pretty much as soon as you open the door, they're assessing you. So if you're the person answering the door, and you've said you have real difficulty getting in and out of a chair or to and from the front door or anything like that in the form, and then you're clearly doing something different to that, then straight away they're going to be making a mental note of it. When you're in an office, it's the other way around in a way, in that you're not in a comfortable environment or a familiar environment, and often that can lead to a person's disabilities and symptoms of their health conditions becoming more prevalent in those kind of environments. They can also feel kind of disorientated, maybe even out of sorts, because of the stress levels that they're having with going along for the assessment. Many people argue that there shouldn't really be a need for an assessment, as obviously you've had a lot of assessments with your doctor and so on, other health professionals as well. But the idea of the health assessment is to establish your daily living needs and how you cope with them, and to also essentially corroborate what's been written in your form. So that's in the view of the people that designed the system, it's another way of sort of guarding against fraud, but also it's an opportunity for you to actually get across the reality of what you're doing. So if you are finding that you're having anxiety, or that your health conditions may be too difficult to get through it very easily, but you could have someone with you, then do that as well. So get everything set up. The more that you're prepared and set things up before the actual sit down and face to face, the easier that will be. I mean, the whole visit will last anything from 20 minutes to an hour, usually, rarely more than an hour. And when they first arrive, they will run through, or when you first get there, they will run through the basic things that you need to do first, such as identifying yourself. So you'll be asked to take ID documents with you. Make sure that you take everything you can. Obviously, passport and driving licence are the best things, but they'll also ask for some proof of address as well. The information will be on the form as to exactly what type of thing you need to bring with you. It may also include immigration documents if you're from outside the EU, things like that. So do double check that you've got all the documents you need, and again, the same if they're doing a home visit, have all the documents you need prepared, ready, and sat there waiting for them, so that you can just hand them over quite easily. If you had help in sorting out or finding those documents from somebody, then might be as well to verbally say, you know, my friend Jeff helped me prepare these documents for you earlier, sort of thing. Again, you've got to bear in mind that everything that is happening in that assessment is to corroborate what's said in the form. So if you said in that you're very forgetful and you get muddled and you can't find things very easily, and somebody says to you, oh, do you have your passport, and you know exactly where it is, and you go and you get it and you give it to them, then they may say that that's contradicting evidence. So take care to pay attention to everything that's happening in the interview. And like I say, having an extra person there is a sort of memory backup for you to say, well, yeah, that is or isn't what happened, could be invaluable in the future. Most of the questions you'll be asked will be just about your day-to-day living activities. Be honest. If something is really difficult for you, say it is. Don't say, oh, well, you know, I manage and I'm okay. You know, I'm not saying lay it on thick, but just be honest, just be truthful. You know, if you have difficulty doing some things, then you have difficulty doing them. This is the time to talk about it. You know, if you hold back, then it's not going to do you any favours. Equally, if you've suggested that you have a certain level of disability in the form, and then you're demonstrating on the day that actually you're quite bright and happy and friendly and things like that, then again they're going to say, well, these two things sort of conflict with each other, you know. So try not to contradict what's written in the form, try not to contradict yourself when you're going through things. Answer the questions as directly as possible. You know, if somebody says, well, how do you prepare a meal? Say, well, you know, if it's the case, I have to sit down because I get very, very tired, so I have a perching stool in the kitchen. Most of the time I might just do a microwave meal. Sometimes I'll cook for myself, but then I'm certainly using the stool if I'm doing that. Quite often my husband/wife will come and help me out. You know, things like that. So you've got quite a few options in terms of how you put yourself across to a person, as long as it's honest and straightforward and truthful. You know, just be yourself. That is the most important thing. Don't worry too much. Whatever happens will happen, and there are people there that can support you if the assessment doesn't go as well as you think it will. If you can have somebody there, like I say, just making notes or being supportive, then that's absolutely fantastic. But if you are doing it on your own, just take a mental note of things and you know, take your time, listen to the questions, and respond in your own time. Don't feel pressured. If you need to stop the interview for any reason, just say so. If you've got any health problems or pains or anything like that during the interview, then don't be afraid to stop, to say we need to stop at this point. There will be some physical things to do. They may ask you to do things just touching your shoulders or touching your head, touching your knees, touching your toes, something like that. If you have demonstrated that you have walking difficulties, they might ask you to maybe sort of lift yourself up on your toes, or you know, things like that. Only do what you can do. If you can't do something, just say, no, I can't do that, I'm not able to, it's too painful, it's too difficult. Don't feel like you have to jump through hoops for these people. If you have medical evidence that supports that you have walking difficulties or that you have any physical difficulty, and you aren't able to, you know, to move or do something because it hurts, then just say that that's the case. You know, there's absolutely no point getting an injury or making yourself worse just for the sake of this one interview, because things can be argued afterwards, and it might be a time-consuming process, but your health is the most important thing. And generally speaking, the vast majority of assessors are reasonable, decent people who aren't going to get you to do anything that you're not able to do anyway. You know, there are some horror stories, definitely, and those things have happened and they are true, but there are a lot of people out there working as assessors who are perfectly reasonable people and aren't going to be getting you to hurt yourself in order to complete their assessment. So, generally speaking, as I say, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to do the assessment on average. And once they've done that, they will send you a letter of confirmation that that the DWP have received the assessment and that they're going to pass that through to the decision maker. When you get your final decision, the final decision will include the assessments from the face-to-face interview. And it's very important that you go through this with a fine-tooth comb. If you feel that there's anything that hasn't been recorded properly or that you've in any way been misrepresented, you need to be making a note of those things. If you don't get the rate that you think you deserve, then you should challenge it as soon as possible. There will be a time limit for which you can ask for mandatory reconsideration. Generally speaking, it's about 4 weeks. You can do that over the phone, or you can write a letter to them to do that. Essentially, mandatory reconsideration is just a request for a different decision maker to look at your whole case again. But if you have received the report and you can see that there are inaccuracies in the report, then sometimes writing a letter might be a better way to go, where you can point by point go through the assessment and say, well, the assessor has said this and this is incorrect or not true or whatever, and challenge direct things before the next assessor looks at it. At the end of the day, it is sort of making it clear as well what you think your levels are. So if you use the descriptors to fill out your form, you should have an idea of what score that you think you should be getting after you filled in the form, the score for each section and the overall score. So if you don't achieve that, then it's worth asking to have a mandatory reconsideration. And again, it's another opportunity to submit any further evidence or extra evidence that's come up in the meantime. If that doesn't pan out, then your next approach obviously is to go to an appeal. Again, this is something that is best done with support. Many organisations that support you with filling out the forms and completing them and submitting them don't necessarily support you with either the face-to-face interviews or even the appeals process. So it may be that you have to take someone with you who is a personal friend or something like that, but whatever you do, get as much professional advice and as much professional support as possible before doing the appeal. And do remember as well, you don't have to appear in court of any kind when it comes to doing an appeal. Most courts will offer you the option of having it decided on the papers, which means all the paper evidence that's submitted should be enough. So you can write a sworn statement in that and even have it witnessed by somebody else and put that as part of your evidence. You can collect letters from doctors, from physiotherapists or healthcare workers that are supporting you, all those kind of things to just back up your case. If there's been problems with the form, maybe it wasn't filled in correctly, you left most of the pages blank and actually you've got more health problems than maybe you communicated in the first place, then it might be that the outcome of the appeal is that you have to do the whole process again and actually get some support with filling things in properly. That's not a bad result to get if that's what happens. It may be stressful and it may mean that it takes more time, but it does mean you've got another opportunity to sorting it out. So if on the other hand all the evidence was provided in the correct way in the first place and the form was pretty robust and the face-to-face interview went reasonably well and you feel like you expressed yourself properly and demonstrated your disabilities properly, then what you're essentially going to be trying to do is to challenge any mistakes that were made on their part. So that's why it's important to go through the assessment report with a fine-tooth comb before submitting anything, and also doubling down with evidence that you have to back things up for you. And it might be that you also have additional evidence from people that care for you, that they can sort of say what they've witnessed. So doing that in some cases may well be better than going in and sitting down in the actual courtroom, because it can be distressing and it can lead to you actually kind of sort of shooting yourself in the foot without realising it. Quite often people have gone into court and because of the stress they've not communicated something properly, or they didn't answer a question in the right way, and that's sort of led to them being denied the benefit again, even more so when actually they should have received it. So it's really, if you are going to go into a court environment, certainly try and have somebody with you for moral support, if nothing else. But if you can get professional support, either through health agency, voluntary agency, solicitor, anything like that, whatever you can do, just get as many people as you can on side, and see how it goes. I mean, as I've said before, more than likely most people who go through the system don't have to go through mandatory reconsideration or even an appeal. Many people choose not to because of the stress levels involved, and that's something that's quite upsetting. It's not because they don't qualify, but it's because the actual stress of going through it all is quite difficult, and it's something that they don't want to do, nor should they have to, but sometimes it goes that way. So that's the end of my video. So and just some things to think about before you do approach any of those things. If you've had personal experiences of the PIP assessment, do feel free to drop those experiences in the comments below, because it does help other people out. Obviously, like, share, and subscribe, and yeah, just any questions as well, drop those into the thing below, and I'll try and answer those. Obviously, I'm not the arbiter of all things, but I do try and give as up-to-date and accurate advice as I possibly can. And obviously, I've been through a lot of these benefit applications, and I've seen the different reasons and different things that makes one successful or not successful. So just see how you go, and like I said, don't be put off, because it could well make a huge difference to your life. So yeah, thanks for listening.